Blog Talk Radio.
Ah, there we go.
Correctly with the correct amount.
And now for our feature presentation.
Because it wouldn't be an episode of the Untitled Movie Show without some intro weirdness. You're listening to Miguel Leon and Michael Burhan of the Nerd Genius. It's Thursday. It's movie night. It's the Untitled Movie Show here on Blog Talk Radio on RetroUnlimited.com. Michael Burhan, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you very much, Miguel. I'm just sitting here and listening to yourself talk and stuff. And I just watched a movie today, believe it or not. I was comparing notes with Tam Man, Rob Band's other half, on the Riddick movie. Apparently, she was telling me that Vin Diesel actually remortgaged his house to have this movie funded.
Yeah, he desperately has been wanting to get a sequel for Chronicles of Riddick out since the first one came out. And keep in mind, the first one came out in 2004. And even he was like, yeah, David Twohy did an okay movie, but it's not the sequel to Riddick that I wanted. I mean, for better or worse, Riddick really, you can tell Vin Diesel loves that character because it's the character that basically made him a celebrity. It made him a superstar. You know?
It's a fun thing as well because I think he probably made that money back and then some anyway from the Fast and Furious franchise, because ever since it turned into a heist movie franchise, from the like fast car franchise that it was previously, he's doing like a lot better. But in terms of this movie, it wasn't too bad. It was a good movie. In places, it seemed rather like rushed, but it had a nice little strong build. The story was there, and it really managed to bring back the whole pitch black tone. It explained a lot of the second movie as well, what happened afterwards and how he ended up back on the planet and stuff like that. And it really worked. And I have to give a big kudos to Vin Diesel for that.
Yeah, well, you know how he got the rights to Riddick back, right?
No, I knew he bought them back from Universal, didn't he?
No, he didn't buy them back. That was his payment for being in Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. He said he didn't want to get any money for his cameo at the end of the third Fast and the Furious movie. He said, you don't have to pay me, but I want you to sign over the rights to the Riddick character. And they did. Universal basically signed him over the rights, and he appeared in Fast 3. And like I said, he mortgaged his house basically, put a lien on it, so he can fund this movie.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, he like I said, he loves the character. You know, his development company, Tygon Entertainment, I believe it's called. I believe that was the company that made the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay movie for the Xbox.
Oh, the little cartoon thingy.
No, not the cartoon, the Xbox game.
Oh, the game, yeah.
His development studio that he has a stake in, like I think it's called like Tygon Entertainment. They're the ones that developed it, and it's considered one of the better movie-based game adaptations. Like I said, this is Vin's character. You know, Riddick is Vin Diesel's baby.
Oh, well, you know, at the end of the day, I can see why the character made him, in a sense, and he's really like excelling in terms of like the character itself. I want to see another Riddick movie because he deserves another movie because of the fact that the story's not finished yet, and there's a lot of loose ends that the last movie has left that I think need to get tied up. But apart from that, good movie. So kudos to Vin Diesel there. That was money well spent, I think, on my part.
Yeah, and I got to give him credit for bringing back David Twohy, you know, having him come back to do the third movie, because, you know, most times when you see a movie come back after several years, I mean, like I said, the first movie was, 2004, so it's been about 9 years, you know, for him to actually go back and find the original director, the original writer, and bring them back for the third movie is admirable as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because he really wanted to make this movie shine, and he did so, you know. And that's one thing that I will like give to him was the fact that he actually, there was a story, the premise, everything was there. usually when they do a sequel to a movie, they kind of ignore what happened in the previous movie.
Yeah.
Or they'll just brush it off. You know, with this, he literally acknowledged the last movie and actually added to it. You know, allowed him to continue the story and talk about why he went from one place to another.
Yeah, it wasn't just, hey, here's just Vin Diesel, faffing about. There's continuity. Although from what I've heard, it kind of starts off as that. It's like a solid 10 minutes of him just walking around for the most part. But it's Vin Diesel, so it's cool.
Well, the thing is, it allowed it to build up another story, if that makes sense, because of the way they started off at a slow build, but it was to build his relationship with like this other character that they've put in there. He had like this dog character that he was with.
Yeah.
Which was like this alien dog thing. It started off with a few of them chasing after him, and he killed them, and he saved like a puppy, and like bred the puppy to the point where he raised it basically, and it became his traveling companion. So it's more about his story with that, how he survives on the planet after being left there, and builds up to the point where these guys, where these other elements get put in place. So that's the whole reason behind it. It was not really faffing about. It's just a slow build story.
Well, I definitely want to see it. I was pulled into it when I first saw the trailer several months back. I loved it. I love that. I saw the Red Band trailer, so I got to see a lot of those scenes. I believe the scene was where all the mercenaries are surrounded by him, and he somehow kicks a knife into one of the guys' faces, and I was like, I'm in, I'm set. And plus, I just love the cast. I mean, you got Vin Diesel, you got Big Dave Bautista, and he doesn't look odd or out of place. You got Katie Sackhoff basically playing Starbuck again. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it. I've heard a lot of good things, especially I checked out the Cinema Snob's review when he did his midnight screening as well as Spoonies, and they both gave it rave reviews. So that's enough for me. I definitely want to check this movie out.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's a good movie. If you're looking for story-driven characters, if you're looking for a well-written story, you're probably going to have to look elsewhere. But in terms of an action movie and in terms of a Riddick movie, I would actually put it in front of Chronicles of Riddick.
Oh yeah. I mean, Brad Jones said it best. It's not so much that it's a bad movie; it's a B movie. This is clearly written by somebody who wanted to make a popcorn B movie. It's kind of like one of those old Italian exploitation action films. Like this is something you'd see Bruno Mattei making. You know, in terms of the dialogue. But I mean, like I said, I'm completely and utterly up for that. Honestly, I didn't hate Chronicles. I think Chronicles is a pretty solid film. I think it needed a better lead character. Nothing against Riddick, but I don't see him as the space opera type, and that's what Chronicles of Riddick felt to me. It was an old-school space opera. It's just that's not the Riddick character. He's much better when he's in confined spaces, when he's a hunter, not as a galactic savior.
Yeah, the thing is, me and Tam were actually talking about this. We're on the same wavelength when it came to this thing, because it's quite funny, because I always considered Chronicles of Riddick Conan. This movie was a space Conan movie.
I could see that. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
I liked it for that fact. She didn't like it for that fact, but I liked it for the fact because they were it was like they were building into the next Schwarzenegger. And it had that exact Conan moment where he sits on the throne, out just after defeating the villain, and everyone's like chanting his name and stuff like that. And it's great at a sense as well, because he suffered a loss in the middle of the movie and stuff. And it was... I could see what they were trying to do, but it didn't give Riddick's character any substance. It made no sense for Riddick. But as a Conan thing, you could sit there and say, okay, I get that, but he's always going to be that waddling traveler, the guy that basically has to get himself out of trouble. He's not looking for it, but he gets himself out of it and he prepares. And that's exactly what this movie did. Mm-hmm. And it was good. And again, there's a clear, unlike Pitch Black, there's a clear view of who Riddick is in this one. You know, he's had enough backstory to understand who the character is, instead of previously, like in the Pitch Black movie, where we didn't know if this guy was good or bad.
Yeah, and I think the character works best when it's kind of ambiguous, you know, where it's kind of when there's a mystique behind it, you know, which, like I said, I like Chronicles of Riddick, but the space the big budget space hero is not a look that I think fits the Riddick character. I think he works better in smaller settings, like in this third movie.
Yeah, I think that in terms of movies themselves, when it comes to Riddick's character, you have to literally put him in a position where he needs to get out of it. It's never going to be him looking for trouble or him trying to have purpose or anything like that. You have to put him in a situation where someone's looking for him, and you've got to find out exactly, you know, what he's going to do to get out of it. But again, as I said, kudos to everybody involved. Kudos to Vin Diesel. It was a very, very good movie.
Yeah, and I definitely give it a recommendation. And folks, if you want to call in on the show, the number to call is 213-943-3434. This is the Untitled Movie Show on blogtalkradio.com. Let's get into our first bit of news. We're going to get into our main topic tonight, which is Man of Steel, later on in the show in the second hour. But this first hour, we're going to start off with some movie news. And Burhan, break out the champagne and the party hats. We got to celebrate, man. First bit of news. Shia LaBeouf retires. Woo!
Woo-hoo! Oh, thank freaking God for that. The last time I heard Shia LaBeouf news was like he was stinking up a set somewhere. Apparently he pissed Brad Pitt off to the extent.
Oh, well, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's actually a lot worse. But first, let's go into the main bit, because there's layers to this. Shia LaBeouf recently put out some tweets saying, "In light of the recent attacks against my artistic integrity, I am retiring from all public life. My love goes out to all those who have supported me." For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, Shia LaBeouf has been getting in trouble recently for massive plagiarizing. His most recent short film, HowardCantor.com, was recently attacked by a graphic artist, Daniel Close, for basically copying verbatim Close's online comic book, Justin M. Damiano. HowardCantor.com is a short film starring, what's the guy's name? Philip Seymour Hoffman, about a oddball movie reviewer. And basically, from what Mr. Close is arguing, and he has proven this by showing storyboards of his graphic novel online, Shia LaBeouf basically copied his material almost word for word.
But why would you do that, though? Did he think that he wasn't going to get caught?
Oh, it gets worse. It gets worse, because that same week he was he was accused by poet Charles Bukowski of copying poems from Bukowski's online comic book. Let's see. Oh, it doesn't say the name of his comic book, but online poet Charles Bukowski alleged that Shia LaBeouf stole some of his online poems for LaBeouf's 2012 comic Let's Effin' Party, as well as people have found evidence that LaBeouf also has plagiarized French novelist Benoit de Tourtre for stealing bits from his writings for his story Stale and Mate. So Shia LaBeouf, in 1 week, has been accused of plagiarism from 3 different artists.
I don't know what to say on this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, Burhan, it gets worse. It gets worse.
Oh, God.
Because he responded to all these claims with 2 tweets. First tweet: "I have let my family down, and I regret those transgressions with all my heart." Second tweet: "I was wrong, terribly wrong. I owe it to future generations to explain why." If those tweets sound familiar, it's because they're stolen from Tiger Woods' apology tweets from his scandal back in 2009, as well as bits from Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara's memoirs.
So this guy has no creative bone in his body, no originality at all.
Basically, I mean, it's bad enough you steal from one person. It's bad enough you steal from 3 people. When you steal your apology for stealing from those 3 people, you basically have no artistic integrity, in my opinion. I mean, here, Here's a look. He's actually been getting in trouble recently from some other quotes of his. In a recent interview he did with Bleeding Cool, which is a website, he said, and I quote, "Authorship is censorship. Simple. Should creation have to check with a lawyer? Yes. When you steal from other people, you do.
I don't make sense. It's just for me, LaBelle is just being an idiot. You know what plagiarism is. If it was him, and say I took his movie and I released it on a video on demand platform, he would do me with a copyright claim.
Yeah.
So what that would make me the bad guy in all this.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically taking his ball and running home with it now with this. Don't mind that, folks. That's my phone. My phone always goes off during these shows. I don't know why, but he's basically whining about how, why should I have to play by the rules and everything? What you're gonna? I thought this was America. This is America. Like he's basically pissing and moaning because he got caught plagiarizing, and he's sitting there going, well, so what? It's plagiarism. You're stealing from other people. You're stealing other people's work that you didn't do. But because you think you're Shia LaBeouf, because you've had a few big hits under your belt, and because you're pals with Spielberg, you think you can get away with it. It's like he just doesn't get it.
Yeah, it's to me, it sounds like his ego has taken into full force.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And in terms of the way that LaBeouf is, he really needs to grow the fuck up. And you know what? I'm glad he's retiring, because if if he doesn't see that he's doing anything wrong, then he really, really is mistaken.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that I thought would get better with time, especially since he kind of, like I said before, he palled up with Spielberg. He kind of became what DiCaprio was to Scorsese, what Johnny Depp was to Tim Burton. I mean, he kind of appeared in a lot of Spielberg projects in recent years. I believe he did like some golf movie with Will Smith that Spielberg was. No, I don't think that was that movie. But he did something with Steven Spielberg that wasn't Transformers, and obviously the Transformers series. And he did Eagle Eye. Eagle Eye was a Spielberg produced thing. So,
Yeah.
I figured, maybe Spielberg saw something that I didn't. Maybe this guy will get better, like a DiCaprio. DiCaprio got incredibly good. I mean, if you've seen his recent performance in Wolf of Wall Street, I mean, he's come a long way since Titanic.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet. I want to see that movie. Apparently, it's getting rave reviews from a lot of people, even though it kind of brings you to face value on the fact that it shows how freaking nasty Wall Street is.
Oh yeah, it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
Brad Jones said it best. It's basically what happened if you combine Wall Street with Caligula.
Yeah.
And just kind of let that set in, folks, before you decide to watch this movie. But I've heard DiCaprio's just amazing. He basically just steals the movie.
Well, that's always what he's like, because he's a polarizing character in a sense, and he's a very polarizing actor. And I think LaBeouf kind of was like, he was kind of like the whiny brat that he was playing in Transformers.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that was just method acting and how much of that was just Shia LaBeouf on set, just being Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, and it just looks like that's the character he was playing. And I think it's one of the reasons why they decided not to bring him back, in a sense. And I don't blame them. In my opinion, I think he's washed up. But there were loads of issues going on with him as well. Apparently, he was being really arrogant on set and said that he was method acting because you wouldn't have a wash.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, keep in mind he also trash talked the movie after it was released. I mean, no wait, that wasn't. Was that Transformers? It was either Transformers or Indiana Jones. I believe it was Indiana Jones, where he basically said, it was Indiana Jones, because he name dropped Harrison Ford. He's like, even me and Harrison think this movie wasn't that good, which you just don't do. Unless it's like 5 or 10 years after the fact, you don't badmouth the movie you're in.
You shouldn't really do it anyway, because, look, I have to admit, I've released some stinkers in my time in terms of movies, but I've gotten better as an actor, and in a sense, those movies, I still hold them dear because they're part of my catalogue. They're stuff that I've been in. I've made choices as an actor in certain roles that I've played. It's allowed me to develop. With him, he's just an arrogant little shit. He's like the Justin Bieber of acting.
That's actually pretty apt. I can't disagree with you on that one. Well, like I said, I think it goes back to the fact that he's been in the public limelight. He's been in Hollywood since, being really young. Maybe a retirement is what he needs. Just take a couple years and just kind of be a real person again,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he needs to just stop and realize that it's time to, take a step back, get out of the limelight, and do what what's his name? I'm trying to figure out what was it? Jacques Phoenix?
Joaquin Phoenix?
Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix. He's basically, he did that movie. He was trying to play everybody. It kind of backfired. And he took some time away from acting, and then came back and admitted, I was trying to play this character out. We had this faux documentary going on. It was supposed to be
Are you talking about The Village?
No, there was this document. Remember when he walked around with that weird beard and went on David Letterman and just sat there?
Kinda. I'd have to go back. Well, I've never been a big Joaquin Phoenix fan, to be honest with you. I mean, I liked him in Signs, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't think he's a bad actor, but he just does nothing for me. I'm glad that he's back. I'm glad that he's back doing Her. I snarked at that movie because of the ridiculous premise, but I've heard nothing but good things about that movie, and we'll talk about that when we get to our next story. But like I said, sometimes you just got to take a break from Hollywood. You just get eaten up by it, and you turn into I don't know what it is, man. You see a lot of these young actors that are out right now. I mean, they're all going insane because they've spent years and years in the public limelight, and they don't know how to be a real person.
It's because they don't understand there's an element out there. You start to believe your own hype in a sense.
Yeah.
Like with when I was getting praised for certain work that I did, I'd never sort of let my ego get in the way. I would understand that there's certain steps that you've got to take, but I'd probably not. I'm nowhere near that level in terms of what other actors are doing. And with Shia LaBeouf, I think he's gotten so popular so quickly, it just hasn't helped him at all.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say good riddance, but, a couple years, maybe some acting classes, and maybe your next big return to film might actually yield some praise, and stop stealing, basically. I think that's the lesson to learn here. Don't steal other people's work and think you can get away with it, folks. It's never going to work. And
stop feeling entitled.
Yeah.
You're not entitled. Nobody's entitled. Nobody on the planet should feel that they're entitled to anything. In a sense, if you work hard and you get somewhere awesome, if you think that you're entitled to certain things, then obviously we know what's going wrong and who the douchebag is, because that douchebag is you, my friend.
Words well spoken, sir. And folks, if you want to join in on our next topic, the number is 213-943-3434. Let me see what the chat's up. Hold on, I forgot to actually launch the chat. Let me launch the chat right now. Sorry about that, folks. I'm still trying to get a hold of this whole hosting thing. I'm better, though. I'm way better than I was last week. I will fight you on that. Only one in here is the Retro On Limb Network. Folks, if you're listening to it, jump into our flash chat. I've got it set up. If you want to call in the show, we'll put you in the queue, and then we'll bring you up if you got some information. Like I said, later in the show, in the 9 o'clock hour, we'll be talking about Man of Steel. But right now, let's get on to another bit of news. Oscar nods have come out, Oscar nominations. And it shouldn't surprise a lot of people which ones are in their spots right now. Best Picture right now seems to be between American Hustle, Captain Phillips, Dallas Buyers Club, Gravity, Her, as we mentioned before, Nebraska, Philomena, 12 Years a Slave, and The Wolf of Wall Street. What was that?
Oh, that was my phone. I do apologize.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. It just kind of threw me off. But, yeah, not surprising, a lot of these movies. Honestly, I had a lot of these pegged for Oscar wins at some point. I mean, when I first heard that Captain Phillips might be up for an Oscar, honestly, I was like, that's going to get it. Tom Hanks, Return to Fame, that's going to win it. But then, as the years gone by, we've seen stuff like Gravity, which I'm actually surprised that a hard sci-fi movie is up for Best Picture. You don't really see that nowadays.
Yeah, it's I think mostly now there's not really that much out there in terms of Oscar nods. So they went with like the brightest out of the lump of shit that came out in 2013. And I'm not saying these were bad movies, they weren't. They were actually pretty good movies. But
Yeah.
if you look at the list of movies that came out in 2013, there weren't really that great stuff to pick from. You know,
Yeah, we're not talking about, this isn't a 1993 or a 1997. I mean, those years had some really stiff competition. I was actually looking up on like Oscar, the past history of the Oscars on Wikipedia, and man, there have been some heated years. I mean, you look back at like, I believe 1993 was the year where it was the Best Picture was up between Shawshank Redemption, Forrest Gump, and Pulp Fiction. I mean, how can you choose between those three movies?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that shows, in terms of competition now, it's like the majority of these Oscar contentions, they're all released in a certain 3-month period.
Yeah, that's actually a practice in Hollywood. November and December are Oscar month, are both Oscar months. Basically, any Oscar movies that you expect to win awards or anything, they're all released within this period. That's kind of a known practice in Hollywood. They usually
Kind of
wait.
silly, though, I think.
They want to do it because they feel that if it's more recent, there's a better chance it'll be remembered and considered for the Oscar nods than if it was released in January, because you tend to forget those movies. I mean, I can't think of many movies that were released in the January period for their respective years that actually won. I think one of the only ones that I could think of that pops into my head would probably be Silence of the Lambs. That was released in its year, 92, I believe, was that year? Yeah, it might have been 92. That was released. That had a January release, and it swept the Oscars that year. It won all 5 of them: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Leads, Best Screenplay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. But in terms of what we have, I haven't seen many of these movies. I may do a movie file series on the Oscar movies and just do a huge burn through at the cinema. But we shall see.
Yeah, in terms of the ones I'm pegging, I haven't seen this movie, and considering the topic at hand, I really probably won't. But I've heard 12 Years a Slave is probably a shoo-in for Best Picture. I mean,
yeah, every person that I've seen it in the theater community have all been this is very artsy. It tells a story. It's very empowering and very emotive.
Yeah, it kind of smells of Oscar bait in a way. Not to say that that's wrong. Not every movie that's Oscar bait is bad. It just, you can tell this movie was made with ambition in mind. Same thing with, like, I can say the same thing about American Hustle in a way. Like I said, the ones that surprise me are stuff like Gravity. I'm not saying Andrew Cuomo is not capable of making an Oscar movie, because he made Children of Men as well. But for such a hard sci-fi movie to be in the Best Picture nomination, like I said, you rarely ever see that. I mean, the only other movie I can think of recently is probably Avatar, and that was a travesty. That movie should never have been nominated for Best Picture.
It's kind of the movie that started off everybody doing bloody 3D.
I did not like Avatar. I mean, look, I'll say this right now. I don't hate the movie. I think what angers me is the fact that it gets kind of lumped in. It's like, oh my God, Avatar is this amazing film. It's good. And that's about as much as I'll give it credit. I've seen it once. I don't have to go back to see it. I don't know why that movie, out of every other movie that was released that year, made the $2 billion mark. I mean, I can understand Titanic. You look at Titanic, that was a very ambitious movie for 1997, and to me, kind of deserved its Oscar nominations. give credit where credit's due. James Cameron was the king of the world that year. But Avatar, just that, I think it was just because it was James Cameron that thing got an Oscar nod, and I'm glad he got beat out by his ex, that Catherine Bigelow won for The Hurt Locker. I think she deserved it way more than Avatar.
Yeah, as I said, the movie itself is not, in terms of story, it's not that great. Yeah, I can understand it's like, okay, these people are their homes because they need that unobtainium.
Yeah, which, by the way, you're really dealing with a very original script when you use a placeholder word like unobtainium.
Yeah.
The Core used that movie, and no one's going to argue that The Core is nothing more than a B movie. I like The Core, but that's a B movie right there. But, I mean, come on, Avatar's basically just, it's Pocahontas, it's Dances with Wolves, it's Fern Gully. It's a story we've seen over and over again. I mean, I basically sat there and I was like, all right, this is about to happen, followed by this, and then this, and then this. I mean, I got the movie down beat for beat for beat. I mean, it's pretty, but in this day and age, when you've got movies like the Transformers series winning Best Visual Effects Oscars, yes, that did actually happen, people.
Yes, it did.
I mean, special effects and 3D and whatnot, that it doesn't mean nothing anymore if you have good special effects. I mean, the days of like the Pixar movies being wowing us in terms of their visual effects, it's kind of over, I mean, it's not the mid '90s anymore. I'm not wowed by flashy CGI. I know what goes into that. I've studied it, So you got to have a little bit more than that to be Oscar worthy. And man, like I said, Avatar got where it was because it's James Cameron.
Yeah, I think that also started the trend of people making films look pretty instead of actually concentrating on a good script and good actors.
Well, that's why I'm glad Gravity is in there, because I think the actors involved were great. I think the premise was good, and I think Andrew Cuomo is a really great director, and I think really should go on to much bigger and much better stuff. I don't think he's going to win the Oscar. I think, like I said, 12 Years a Slave is probably going to walk away with this. And in terms of a movie that I would probably peg as like a second best, I still got to go Captain Phillips. I think the fact that Tom Hanks is involved, they're going that might guide them to picking it up. But in terms of directing, we've also got David O. Russell for American Hustle and Alfonso Cuomo. I'm sorry, folks. Cuarón. I'm just ruining that guy's name. The guy that directed Gravity. He's up for an award.
Is there anything for Bale in there as well?
For Christian what?
Christian Bale, because apparently he put an astounding performance to American Hustle.
He actually is up for leading man Oscar.
I thought so. He actually has an Oscar already for Best Supporting Actor. So it'll be, if he gets the leading man nod as well, he'll have a lot more credibility. But in a sense, it's weird as well. The Best Actor and Best Actress Oscars usually are a death sentence for whoever gets them.
Really? I never saw that.
Okay, don't you remember when, what's her name?
Her name?
Oh.
Are you thinking Halle Berry?
No, was it Anne Hathaway? It wasn't Anne Hathaway. It was, Anne Hathaway was one of them. What was her name?
She got to play Miz, I believe.
Yeah, and what's her name? She was in Thor.
Not Scarlett Johansson.
No, the other one, Natalie Portman. Both of them suffered a huge career setbacks after winning the Oscar nods. So think about that.
I'll have to look into that. Maybe there's an Oscar curse. Maybe we could talk about that for next week. But I've got plans for what we want to talk about next week. But maybe we'll work that into there somehow. Also, in the directing category, we've got, obviously, David O. Russell's American Hustle, Alfonso Cuarón for Gravity, Alexander Payne for Nebraska. Okay, I don't have cable, so I have not seen anything in terms of this Nebraska movie. What is it about?
No idea.
Okay, 12 Years a Slave, Steve McQueen, and Martin Scorsese, The Wolf of Wall Street. I kind of want to see Scorsese win another Oscar. I think Scorsese's a phenomenal director. I think he deserved that Oscar for The Departed. I kind of want to see him walk away with another one.
He's one of those guys, I think, as a director, he understands exactly how to do a nice story with very driven characters. And, The Departed itself, it gave a resurgence to, like, Jack Nicholson's career. Because he went from being this guy who was mostly known for his, like, love movies at the time, because he was doing loads of romantic comedies and stuff, and it gave him this edge back, making him like the mafia boss in that movie, and I thought it really, really worked well. It also made Matt Damon into this, like...
serious actor. He wasn't just the bro from Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, and a very dark... It gave him that same credibility back that he had from films like A Talented Mr. Ripley.
Mm-hmm.
That very dark edge, the ability to actually play a character. And it also gave Mark Wahlberg sort of a resurgence in his career as well, after, like, his career was going down the pan before he started doing that movie.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say that. I mean, Mark Wahlberg, I think, was kind of floating around at the time. I don't remember what he was really doing. Not to say that Wahlberg's a bad actor. I mean, go watch Boogie Nights, and you'll see that Wahlberg's a phenomenal actor.
He is. He is very underrated. I think he reminds me a lot like of Ben Stiller. He kind of chooses his roles in a sense. He'll do like the shitty stuff that doesn't make any sense, like the funny comedies and bits, just so he can actually get a meteor role afterwards.
Yeah, and he's doing good with the comedies. I mean, I thought he was really good in Ted. He's kind of finding his groove in terms of being that affable, funny guy. I think he's really starting to feel more comfortable in that role. And like I said, guy's a great actor. And The Departed, for being a remake, which a lot of people don't realize, that movie's actually a remake of a
Japanese movie.
Yeah, it's a remake of a Japanese movie, in Internal Affairs. For
Correct.
a remake, it's actually one of the better ones. And I got to give Scorsese credit. He really stuck to the source material and cranked out a masterpiece, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's one of those. He's one of those actors who, in terms of characters, he can play some amazing characters. The problem is, he just gets too many shitty roles. And he is known a lot for the shitty roles that he does. He was amazing in Ted. I watched Ted twice. I went to the cinema twice to watch that movie, and I watched it on DVD and Blu-ray.
Yeah, I watched it. I liked it. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Seth MacFarlane or a lot of his humor, but I think that the character that the main character, I forgot his name, but the main character that he plays is really likable. And like I said, I've raved nonstop about Pain and Gain. I thought the chemistry between him and Dwayne Johnson was just there. That's one of my favorite movies of the year.
He played Psycho really well in that movie, and I have to admit, for a Michael Bay movie, it was pretty good.
This is the first. I agree with what Brad Jones said. This is the first Michael Bay film where it felt like Bay had a message. Like, it wasn't just about the explosions. Even though there were explosions, there was more to it. Like, he said it himself. This is Bay's Fight Club. This is Bay's American Psycho. This is one of those movies that would have been a masterpiece if it had come out in its time frame, because the movie itself is set in the mid to late 90s. This movie would have definitely fit in well with that kind of thing. It
was very character driven.
Yeah, it's a very high concept film for a director like Michael Bay. No matter what he cranks out next with like the Transformers movies, I can always look back and say that, well, he did Pain and Gain, so he's kind of okay in my book.
But saying that, he knows how to write good stories. Like Bad Boys was a good story. Then Bad Boys 2, 3, it ended up turning into sort of let's go on a car chase and kill people.
Well, if you look at Jerry Stahl, the writer of Bad Boys 2, if you look at his kind of writing, I think that was the point. I think Stahl knew what he was working with when he wrote Bad Boys 2, so I think that was supposed to be intentional. I think a lot of the over-the-top nature of 2 is meant to be tongue-in-cheek. And honestly, I think the biggest problem with 2 is that it's just way too long. Chop like 20 minutes off of that movie, and I think it would be a lot more serviceable. But watching it again, I kind of get it. I get it. It knows what it's doing. In
a sense, I think it does. But there's a lot more in terms of issues where Michael Bay, and I believe this started like pre-Transformers. Like he did when he did Pearl Harbor, for instance. That movie made no bloody sense. That
movie was basically just a wartime version of Titanic. To me, it just felt like Michael Bay was trying to make his own version of Titanic, and it he was nowhere near that talented yet. I think keep in mind, up until that point, his biggest movie was Armageddon, and that movie's rough.
Let's not talk about that movie. that movie keeps getting shown over here for some weird reason. But again, as I said, in terms of what he can do, he doesn't really show it off. And I think Pain and Gain is the first movie I actually sat down, watched it, and went, that was a good Michael Bay movie. And you know what? I give credit to Dwayne Johnson as well for the character he played, because Johnson is what he usually does in terms of his characters. It's usually, I'm the big action hero. Look at me, I have muscles. But with Pain and Gain, he kind of parodied that a little bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was psychotic by the end of it, but psychotic in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awesome. I think it's hard to say what my favorite Rock moment is because there's so many, but the one that pops into my head is when he's helping out with the neighborhood watch meeting, and then he goes behind the when he goes behind the stage, and all of a sudden you just hear him go, "Oh yeah, that's good."
Yeah, his character is very stylized. It worked really well, and he played simple. This was like Lenny of Mice and Men, but played with a hard edge.
Oh, that like I said, I can't rave enough about Pain and Gain. But let's see, we've got other Oscar nods. By the way, folks, just as a reminder, we got 20 minutes until we go into the next hour. If you want to call in, the number 213-943-3434. This is the Untitled Movie Show on Retro Unlimited on blogtalkradio.com. We've got one person in the guest chat that keeps logging in and out. Buddy, if you got any opinions or anything like that, we'll give you a shout-out. Just kind of post them on into the chat. I know there are some people listening on here because I posted a link to this on a Anime and Comics forum, so I know some people have said that they're enjoying the show so far. If you want to call in and give us your opinion, guys, just like I said, numbers right on the show's main page. If you want to call in, just let us know, and we'll queue you up. We're going to speed through the rest of these because I have a bunch of other bits of news that I want to go into. We've got Best Actor, Christian Bale in American Hustle, Bruce Dern in Nebraska, Leo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street, I'm going to ruin this guy's name, Chiwetel Ejiofor, that guy, for 12 Years a Slave, and Matthew McConaughey for Dallas Buyers Club.
Any money, it's going to go to 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah. Everybody I've talked to, every review I've read said the same thing. That guy's got it won. And, hey, that's fine. I mean, I don't think the guy's a new actor, but this might be his big role that gets him to better things, so here's hoping.
It's not just that as well. I think the film itself is going to clean up the awards show.
Yeah, like I said, it feels like an Oscar bait movie, and, there's nothing wrong with that with some movies. It could just be that the movie's just really good. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. But leading lady, Amy Adams in American Hustle, Cate Blanchett in Blue Jasmine, Sandra Bullock in Gravity, Judi Dench in Philomena, and Meryl Streep in August Osage County. I think it might be Osage or Osage County. I don't know. I haven't seen the trailer, but
Judi Dench. That's my pick on that one.
It's either Judi Dench or Meryl Streep. It usually goes to the venerable actor. Very rarely do you see a new actress get it, aside from last year.
Well, Sandra Bullock got hers, if you remember. She won an Oscar previously. Okay. For a movie that she did. What was it called? She was like, because I remember because she had she did the previous movie. She won a Razzie and an Oscar for the same movie. I'm trying to figure out what the movie was called. It's when she was playing the American football. She had like this kid that she was working with.
The Blind Side.
Kid. The Blind Side, yeah. She won an Oscar for that.
Here I'm saying like Speed. She won an Oscar for Speed. I'm an idiot. Best supporting role, we've got it's another African name. I'm gonna say the bad guy from Captain Phillips. We'll just say that, Barkhad Abdi, I believe.
That's not gonna happen. He won't win an Oscar.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper in American Hustle, Michael Fassbender in 12 Years a Slave, Jared Leto in Dallas Buyers Club, and the one that just sticks out to me, and I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know if he's actually worth a supporting actor nomination. Jonah Hill in The Wolf of Wall Street, the Superbad guy.
No, I doubt he'll get it.
You know what? If his performance is good enough for him to be nominated, I got to give him a lot of props because, like I said, I would have never in my wildest dreams thought the Superbad kid, the fat kid from Superbad, was going to ever be nominated for an Oscar, even if it's just a best supporting actor. But
he won't get it. I know for a fact he won't going to get that. It's either going to go to Bradley Cooper, who's been gagging for an Oscar, like for freaking years now since he did that movie.
Silver Lining Playbook.
Silver Linings Playbook. And,
you know what? If you're going to get Bradley Cooper, I'm going to go Fassbender. I like Fassbender. I think.
Yeah, or Fassbender for 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah. And Best Actress in a Supporting Role, we've got Sally Hawkins in Blue Jasmine, Jennifer Lawrence in American Hustle. Jesus Christ, these names for 12 Years a Slave. It's all just names that I feel like I need a translator for. No offense, folks. But Lupita yeah, 12 Years a Slave. Julia, I pulled an Army of Darkness. Klaatu, Barata.
So yeah, that was I technically said it right.
I tried. Julia Roberts in August, Osage County, and June Squibb for Nebraska. I'm gonna go Jennifer Lawrence. It's the only one I recognize on this list. Honestly, I don't know if she's good or not, but it's the only one I recognize.
Yeah, I think Jennifer Lawrence, myself. Either her or it's going to be like the lady from 12 Years a Slave. I'm not even going to try saying her name.
Yeah, and the last one we're going to talk about is Best Screenplay. We're not going to go over like Best Documentary or Original Score. Those are the secondary ones, but these are the big meaty ones that people talk about. Eric Warren and Eric Singer and David O. Russell for American Hustle, Woody Allen for Blue Jasmine, Craig Borton and Melissa Wallach for Dallas Buyers Club, Bob Nelson for Nebraska, and Spike Jonze for Her. I would not be surprised if Her gets Best Screenplay. Spike Jonze is one of those artsy. He's the Oscar darling for a lot of people, so I would not be surprised if he walks away. But then again, Woody Allen's up for one too, and he's kind of the original Oscar darling, so it could go either way in terms of who gets the best screenplay for that.
I don't know. You know what? I'm giving it 12 Years a Slave.
12 Years a Slave isn't on here. It's American.
Seriously?
Blue Jasmine. 12 Years a Slave is Best Adapted Screenplay. That's a different category.
Okay, so I'm going for American Hustle then.
Yeah, I think American Hustle has it. David O. Russell is a really solid writer, but like I said, my vote's going to be a tie between Woody Allen and Spike Jonze. I just get the feeling Her. It's kind of like the Juno situation when Diablo Cody was up for an Oscar for Best Screenplay, which I have no idea why. But you kind of looked at it and it's like, okay, there's a reason why this person's on the list. You know, it's kind of the Tarantino curse. You know, when you see a hip director or a hip writer get an Oscar for Best Screenplay, you kind of look at it and go, okay, they might end up walking away with that.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where it's going to be, I think the momentum was going to go to the film that's getting nods in other categories at the same time. So for me, it will have to be American Hustle, just for the point of it, because if they don't win Best Actor or Best Actress, they're definitely going to win Best Screenplay.
I could see that. Folks, if you want to check online, I'm looking at the list on IGN.com. They've got all the Oscar nods. We only covered the more important ones. But if you want to check out stuff like visual effects, makeup and hairstyle, production design, costume design, things like that, it's up there. Definitely check that out. Speaking of Oscars, though, let's look at the Oscars of bad movies. The Razzies are up now, the nominations for the Razzies. And surprising no one, guess who yet again has swept the Razzies?
Sandra Bullock?
Adam Sandler.
Yeah, that's well-deserved.
Yeah, he's on a roll, man. He's been on a roll for years now. He was nominated for a whopping 10 awards for Jack and Jill back in 2011.
Well, he does movies based on money now. He doesn't really do them based on gag. Well, you'll put some pathetic Adam Sandler-based gags that he does in the movie, like, oh, look, a bicycle. Oh, I'm trying to ride the seat on a bicycle. Oh, look, a pigeon. That pigeon's just shit on my face.
I don't want to go too far into Adam Sandler, and I can do a whole episode on why Adam Sandler sucks. That might be something we might do later down the line, but I saw Grown Ups, or I tried to watch it. I'm going to say it right now. Grown Ups is one of the worst comedies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I could not do it. I tried. It's abysmal. And I know that I've never said that about a movie. I usually try to find positives in movies. There's no positive in this movie. That movie was just abysmal. It was terrible. And it's amazing that you look at the lineup for this movie, any of these movies could have been worst ofs in their own respected years, but the fact that they all came out at once really shows just how piss poor the year for movies has been. I mean, you've got Medea's Christmas, Movie 43, Grown Ups 2, The Lone Ranger, and After Earth. I mean, I thought when Movie 43 came out that was going to sweep the Razzies. Then Grown Ups 2 came out, and I thought, okay, that's going to sweep the Razzies. Then we end with Medea's Christmas last month, and I'm like, okay, that might sweep the Razzies. I mean, just bad movie after bad movie. Ugh, it makes you kind of sick just thinking about it. I mean, there have been years that bad movies have come out, but they haven't been as potent as this year.
Yeah, as I said, it's one of those this year where it's just been, 2013 that is. Like 2014, I'm hoping it's going to be better, but 2013 was just, if I was a movie critic, if I did this as a living, I probably would lose all will to live after actually watching most of these movies.
Well, I think Roger Ebert had it right when he basically was like, "Screw it, I'm gone." Yeah, he saw the tidal wave coming. He's like, "All right, guys, I'm off this mortal plane. See ya."
Yeah, pretty much. It's one of those things you look at it and think to yourself, okay, Shyamalan's directed another movie. That's probably not going to be any good. Oh, look, there's another Medea movie. We haven't seen those before. And, Adam Sandler's doing another shit fest with all his buddies.
You know, one of the things I want to talk about next week, either next week or the week after, is directors. And I want to talk about, like, Adam Sandler and Tyler Perry and things like that. That might actually be next week's topic, given what we've been talking about. I think we might have to do that, talk about directors and just the state of directing as is. So that might be a topic for next week, folks. So tune in.
Yeah, that's going to be a good topic, I think. And in a sense as well, though, you got to look at it. When I try to direct things, I always try to make sure that I stick with the story, that the premise and everything's there in terms of characters and alignments and what's going on. And that characters drive the story. And I think with Sandler, he's not that type of guy. His more is, let's write a bunch of gags and then put a story around that.
Well, like I said, I can do a whole episode on the dissertation of Adam Sandler's career, but we have not nearly enough time for that. In fact, we've got less than 10 minutes left before we get into the 9 o'clock hour, so we're going to hit up 2 bits left. We're going to have to speed through these. The classic Batman TV series is finally coming to home video. After almost 50 years of litigation between several big studios, the Batman, the TV series starring Adam West from the mid-'60s, is finally coming to home video. And it was actually Conan O'Brien, of all people, who tweeted the news on his Twitter account.
Okay.
I decided to bring that up because I looked into this. It's amazing just the tug of war that's been going on for the past 40 years. I mean, this series has been out there floating around for almost 40 years now, and no one's been able to actually really make that much money off of it due to massive interference between several big companies. You've got DC, who own the rights to, obviously, the Batman character, and this was made before Warner Brothers bought them up, so they had full ownership of it, but Warner Brothers, being now the new owners, felt that they had ownership of it, so you got that argument. You've got the argument from Fox, who produced the show, who felt they should have a cut of it, or the only cut. You've got ABC, who helped co-produce it because it was on their network. And you've got William Dossier, who produced The Green Hornet. He was signed on as executive producer of the series. You've got 5 different companies fighting over this thing for the past 40 years, and no one's been able to come to an agreement until now.
Well, the cheesy Batman series.
Yeah.
Well, in the end, if everybody wants to say that they did this, then great. No offense, it's it's Batman, but it's a cheese fest. And if it's like basically me trying to say that I directed The Room. I would probably
Come
not put
on,
my name
Basil.
on that.
You don't like my movie? You don't think I'm a good actor?
No, he isn't. But
You tear me apart, Michael Burhan.
it's one of those things that you sit there and like they had a debate I think over a year ago where like he was fighting with some other guy over who directed The Room and who should be considered the worst director ever. No, those are some weird rights. And in terms of Fox and all these other entities wanting a cut of Batman, Batman's owned by Warner. They were owned by DC and it's owned by Warner. The intellectual property should stay there. So they should have a huge slice of the pie. If Fox produced this or if they made this, then they need a smaller cut directed between Fox and the executive producers. But the large piece of the cake needs to go to Warner, who own the Batman property. So what was the agreement that they made? Is everyone going to get a slice or?
I have no idea, but they finally came to some type of terms where it all gets evenly set up. And like I said, the movies are the series is finally coming out to DVD, which I think is going to sell. I think given Batman fever nowadays, I think there is going to be an audience that's going to go out and buy these DVD box sets of this series. I mean, say what you want, it's one of the more venerable series. You know, it's everybody knows about the Adam West Batman for better or worse. You know, it's one of those things where it's lived on in infamy, and it's kind of almost seen almost in a hipster sort of way. You know, people kind of wax nostalgically about the old style Batman. I do feel it has its place in history, but I do agree with you. I wouldn't call it a masterpiece.
No, it's barely a when you've got a plastic shark fighting with Adam West, I don't think you could call that a masterpiece. But it is one of those things where it's pop culture.
Yeah.
You know, it's. But I wouldn't be sitting there going, I should get a bigger cut because I produced this. I could produce a similar thing with my handy cam.
Yeah, all producers do is really help sell the movie. They attach their name to it and whatnot, and executive producers specifically are basically just there to kind of okay what the director does. They don't have really a say. Well, they do have a say creatively, but it's never a good say. They
basically finance it. That's it. They'll hand some money over and not really do anything else.
Yeah. We've got one more bit of news that's actually going to segue into tonight's topic. Recently, rumors have been circulating that the upcoming Batman and Superman movie, a.k.a. Man of Steel 2, is going to be filmed back-to-back with the upcoming Justice League movie. And
God.
They're saying the justification behind it is that because of so many cameos in Batman and Superman that are going to appear in Justice League, it makes more sense with the actor schedules to just film them all together. Similar to what they did with the later Pirates movies, I would say the later Back to the Future movies, but that was all just one big movie. And
it's
Matrix.
Stupid. It's stupid. And I'll explain why it's stupid. Truthfully, they should have focused on Batman and Superman for this movie. When I talked about this before, I said it would have been an easier way to do it. There was no point going the route that they've gone in terms of bringing all these guys together. Now you've got to find a Green Lantern. There are rumors that Dwayne Johnson's going to be John Stewart.
Like I said, I like Dwayne Johnson. He's not John Stewart.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, if you ask me who I think would be best, I've said it before, I think Idris Elba would be perfect. He just has that venerable, I don't know if I'm using that word right, but he's got that stoic leader quality that John Stewart to me gives off. You know, he's kind of like Captain Sisko in Deep Space Nine, honestly. He kind of reminds me of that type of just strong black presence.
But that's the thing. I don't think the Green Lantern should be black. Because everyone's going that whole, this guy should be black and this guy should be black. At one point, they were even considering Will Smith to be Captain America black.
Oh, I remember going back to when they were rebooting the James Bond franchise, and they actually at one point considered having a black James Bond. They wanted to bring in Denzel Washington, of all people, to play James Bond.
Yeah, and I don't mind that. I think that's fine. The end of the day, though, these are ingrained characters. It's like the whole issue with Michael Douglas being Hank Pym. No.
I was going to bring that up, but I'm honestly not a big fan of Ant-Man. I haven't read much about him, but I will say this, at least in the case of Green Lantern, it fits in because there is Jon Stewart. He is a Lantern, and I think the reason they're doing this is because they want to distance themselves from the Green Lantern movie, the Ryan Reynolds one, which...
Oh, God. It wasn't a bad movie. It was badly written, badly directed.
We'll get into that when we talk about Man of Steel, because Man of Steel is the exact same thing, in my opinion, with them trying to distance themselves from a weaker previous film in the series. But I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to put all these people into here, and the movie's going to be bloated. It's the same thing that happened with Spider-Man 3. You throw too many people into a movie, you don't have enough time to character develop them, you lose something in that. That's why the Marvel movies work, because they build up all the character development in the previous movies. That way you can have your big explosion-y action movie without sacrificing character development, which is important because it's the thing we attach ourselves to. It's the reason why we care about these movies. If you just throw Thor, Iron Man, and the Hulk into a movie without any character development or any reason why we should care about them, it's just going to be noise. It's just going to be explosions and flashy lights.
And you know, when we actually touch on the whole Man of Steel movie to begin with, it's one of those things where you sit there and think to yourself, you know, why do it? Why go that route? And I think they're making a very bad mistake. They have potential to add on to a good story from the first Man of Steel movie, but they're just going to destroy it with the next one. And if they add the Justice League movie on top of that, they're going to end up killing off these characters before they even gain any success.
Yeah, it's funny that we're talking about this because it's a great segue for us to go into our main topic. Burhan, I'm going to need your help real quick. How do I launch a break so I can get something to drink real quick?
Oh, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back straight after these messages, and I will
plug the
do
start
that.
button. We'll do the IGG break theme real quick.
Yep, sure. Let's go on to that. Sorry there, guys. We'll be back right after this.
All right, folks, and after a quick drink break to kind of moisten my throat, as they say. Boy, that was disgusting. We're now into our second hour, and we're into our main topic. And we brought this movie up last week when we were talking about financial flops of 2013, mainly because while this movie was not a flop, it made a ton of money for Warner Brothers. It very much split its fan base and the rest of the viewing community in two. A lot of people love this movie. A lot of people hate this movie. And that's Man of Steel. And that's going to be our topic for our main topic, our problems with Man of Steel. Because I'm going to say this right now, I did not like this movie at all. Burhan, what about you?
I liked what they were trying to do, because when you look at the commercials, it kind of misled me a little bit. I was sitting there going, oh, look, they're going to humanize Superman. That's brilliant. And then they went and did something else instead. They kind of
Batmaned him. They Batmaned him. That's my biggest problem with the movie is they Batmaned.
I wouldn't say Batmaned him. I think they Spider-Maned him, in a sense, because they Uncle Ben'd Pa Kent. That was my first problem. And they made Pa Kent into a dick. They made him Amazing Spider-Man's Uncle Ben. And I think they had two... the symmetry it had with that movie is because he had two polarizing actors in like Martin Sheen and Kevin Costner. Costner's not had a...
Russell Crowe.
No, I mean Uncle Ben, Pa Kent.
Oh, Pa Kent was Kevin Costner, and you're talking about...
Russell Crowe was Jor-El. I'm talking about Pa Kent.
Oh, okay.
But we'll talk about Jor-El in a little bit, actually. But yeah, Kevin Costner was just a dick. It's like, should I let those kids drown? Yeah, son, you should let those kids drown. Because he would need to die. You don't want them testing you and experimenting on you, but, just let those kids drown. It's fine. And then, like, when he broke his leg and let the tornado pick him up, when Superman was just standing there. It's some of those things where you sit there and it really pissed you off to the point was, why would you do that? There's a conundrum that was made when they killed off Pa Kent originally in the series and in the comics. He died from a heart attack. That was the one thing that Superman couldn't fix. And then they killed the character off out of just the way they did it, was kind of showed blatant disregard for the character itself. And now, talking about Jor-El, going on to him, he was the polar opposite. They gave him loads more screen time. I actually liked the character. I think he was good, the way that Russell Crowe played him. And he was kind of the standout character in the movie. But really, he shouldn't have been the standout character. The standout character should have been Superman.
Agreed. And folks, by the way, we're starting into our Man of Steel chat. If you want to get in on this or you got an opinion for it, just give us a call, 213-943-3434. This is the Untitled Movie Show on blogtalkradio.com on the Retro Unlimited Network. Before I get into my opinions in terms of what I think is wrong with Man of Steel, I want to kind of go back in terms of explaining to the people what came about with Man of Steel, why we ended up needing the Man of Steel movie in the first place. So I want to take you guys back to 2006. 2006, this was before the big comic book boom. We were just starting to get into the big comic book boom. Up until this point, comic books had kind of started up, but petered out due to a lot of flops. I mean, it started off great with X-Men and Spider-Man, but when you hit the likes of Daredevil, Elektra, and Catwoman, it kind of petered out after that. Now I'm even gonna slot the Hulk in there. I have no problem with Ang Lee's Hulk, but I think it was very disappointing for a lot of people.
I had no issue with the Hulk, but I think the story was a bit lackluster, and it was a B movie trying to be a AAA film.
Yeah, it was way more ambitious than it thought it was, honestly. And now, it's nothing against Ang Lee. I could see what he was trying to go for, but it's the Hulk, bro. You can't go too artsy with this. With this guy. But yeah, 2006 rolls around, and Bryan Singer steps off of the X-Men series, a mistake, to make Superman Returns, which a lot of people dump on. I like it. I don't think it's a perfect film. I think there are a lot of problems with it, but I like some of the things that it brought to the table. I liked Brandon Routh. I think his portrayal of Superman had a lot of it had a lot of human feeling to it. You know, it was way more. It felt way more developed and way more compassionate than Henry Cavill, which we'll get into in a bit.
Yeah, he gets a lot more heat for that movie than he should.
Yeah, I really liked him, and I honestly would have liked to have seen him continue on with it. You know, I like the fact that they focused more on Superman's story and the whole conflict with him. I wasn't a fan of this whole super baby angle, but the story arc, you know, this whole father angle to it, which I didn't think they went.
They tried to humanize him in the wrong way, I think.
Yeah, I do think. And honestly, I'll be one of the first to say it. I think there should have been a lot more action. I think the climax with him and Lex Luthor on the big floating kryptonite rock was kind of lackluster. I think they really needed something along the lines of, and I hate to say it, but along the lines of Man of Steel's climax. We'll get into the problems with that, but I do think that in terms of the climaxes, I'd actually rather prefer Man of Steel's than Superman Returns. But all in all, I don't think the movie was bad. I think the problem was it was following up Batman Begins, which really revolutionized the Batman movies, and people were expecting another Batman Begins, and they didn't get that.
Yeah.
And you also have to keep in mind this movie was never going to make its money back. It made $400 million worldwide. It cost $250 million, unfortunately. And in 2006, for a movie to cost that much, there was no way that movie was going to make its money back. But I will say this, that's not the fault of the movie. It's because it was also incurring the debt from the previous attempts to make a Superman movie. Because up until that point, they had been trying to make a Superman movie since the mid-'90s, going back to when Kevin Smith submitted his treatment for Superman Lives for Warner Brothers. You know, they had Kevin Smith was signed on to write. They later brought on Tim Burton, and he wrote his version of Superman. You know, and then the film pretty much died a death because they just couldn't get it off the ground, and all that money that was spent on that version of the film was put into the debt for this movie. So it cost a lot, but it didn't need to. Honestly, if it hadn't been for those previous attempts, I think the movie would have been fine. It would have made its money back and more, and we wouldn't have had Man of Steel. I think it would have continued on from there. But there's a big stigma against Superman Returns when it came out, and the studios kind of wanted to distance themselves from it.
Yeah, for me, it was kind of, if they wanted to do a new Superman movie, they should have done one which was original. They shouldn't have gone to and so many people do this, like, oh, we go to the Donnerverse. There's no Donnerverse. You made one movie. Like, the rest of those movies...
One and a half.
Oh, 1.5, yeah.
There's the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, which I've heard is a lot better than the Richard Lester comedy cut that he made.
And with that, though, it's like it wasn't done for any lack of focus sort of thing. And in a sense, the rest of them kind of ballsed up the franchise and kind of nearly killed Reed's career. And that's what happened with this one. It literally put a very huge stall to Brandon Routh's career, which it shouldn't have done. He's a very capable actor and someone who should be doing a lot more work, but instead can't even get work on TV.
Oh yeah, you want to see a good Brandon Routh movie? Go out and buy yourself Dylan Dog Dead of Night. That's a very underrated movie.
It's good. It's not amazing because of the fact that the budget, you could tell, was really thin.
Yeah, but I'll say this, if you're a big fan of the Joss Whedon supernatural shows like Buffy and Angel, you'll be right at home with this movie. I love this movie to death. It's
a very good,
fun.
Very good B movie. Very
most definitely. And Sam Huntington almost steals the show from Brandon Routh.
Yeah.
But let's move forward from that. Let's move forward to about 2008, 2009, when it's announced that they are going to reboot Superman, and they signed on Chris Nolan. This, I think, is the biggest problem with the movie, is that they tried to shove Superman into the Nolanverse, as it's known as, and I think that was their first mistake. I like Chris Nolan as a producer. I think he's got a great eye. I think he's a great director, but his Batman universe, it's not a Superman universe. It's Batman's greatest... The Batman movie's greatest strengths are that they very much feel real world. They feel like something that really could happen. You know, they're very much based in a reality, albeit it's a little warped in a way. I don't think you have characters like Bane and the Joker, but they don't go so far as to be over the top. They're very much grounded in a kind of movie reality. And I think, unfortunately, for a character like Superman to really fit into that type of universe, that very dark kind of world, it's going to be a really big challenge and really take a lot away from Superman, because that's the whole dynamic of Superman and Batman, is that they're complete polar opposites, you know? You've got Superman, who's got the bright blue cape, the bright red cape and the blue tights, and he's the all-American, you know, truth, justice, and whatnot. And you got Batman, who's this dark, seedy character. That's why their dynamic works so well, is because they are so different. You're taking Superman and you're pushing him into that darker universe, and I think it's a detriment to him. Put it to you like this: I think the transition from the Nolan Batman to Ben Affleck's Batman would have worked better if they put him into the Superman universe than vice versa. And I think that's what bothered me, because Man of Steel, it's an ugly looking movie. It's dark looking. The colors are muted. For some reason, they decided to use this really weird film grain that just makes it hard to watch, especially in 3D, which makes things darker. It just doesn't. It's not a good-looking movie, and I think that's because they tried to fit it into that dark look of the Nolanverse. Yeah,
it's a Nolan movie. It's what if a Nolan fanboy would actually direct a Nolan movie. That's what this movie is.
Yeah, and I think that's going to hurt them in the long run, because can you imagine the Green Lantern or Wonder Woman under that gray palette? I agree with that. That's going to look ugly.
Yeah, it's not one of those things that you really want to do. And in a sense as well, I felt there wasn't enough. They did a good thing with the story, but there wasn't enough story told.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of sacrificed a lot of the story in order to have him destroy everything with Zod.
Well, I'm going to go more into that when we talk about the actual character of Superman, but we've got more to talk about. I'm going chronologically on this one. So they announced that Chris Nolan is the producer of this one, and they bring in, as a director, Zack Snyder. Now, Zack Snyder, I'm 50-50 on the guy. I like a lot of his movies. I do. I think the problem is he kind of is one of those style over substance directors. He's kind of he's very much in the Michael Bay camp in terms of being a guy that focuses more on flashy, slow motion, fast motion, special effects and whatnot, than on setting up a good shot for an action scene. And I think you could tell in that regard with Man of Steel, because there's a lot of this movie that just is hard to watch from a choreography perspective. It's kind of filmed in that weird, almost Battlestar Galactica style, where even in still shots, the camera kind of looks like it's kind of wobbling a little bit. There's a lot of like weird pans that go into zooms. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, where it looks like something is panning across a shot, and then all of a sudden, boom, quick zoom. Or you get a quick zoom into somebody's face. You know, the camera's constantly shaking during action sequences. I mean, it was kinetic. I'll give it that, and that's one of the reasons why I don't completely hate shaky cam. I do think it brings something to some action movies, but when you do it wrong, man, it ruins things. And I think it was not well done in this movie. I thought the action sequences were just kind of hard to watch in a lot of times.
They were very fast-paced.
And I think that's what they were going for, honestly. I think they wanted, because like I said, there was barely any action in Superman Returns, so people wanted more action, and who better to do that than Snyder?
There's a difference between doing action and then exploding like the action sequences in the movie. That's what you have the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. And I think this way they did it the wrong way.
Agreed. And we'll go into the problem with the action sequences, specifically the massive amounts of destruction, in a bit. But we also got to talk about the third equation to this, writer-director David Goyer, who David Goyer is one of those people. He's very hit or miss. Sometimes he makes a good movie. Sometimes he writes a good script, and sometimes he just completely just fumbles the ball. You know, he like I said, like for example, he wrote the first Blade movie, but he also wrote Blade 3 and directed that as well. And like I
Blade
said,
3 was terrible.
you know what? When I was a kid, I liked it. Looking back on it, I can't really say I do.
The best thing about it was Ryan Reynolds.
And Triple H. I'm a wrestling mark, so I'll say that right now.
Where's my dog?
Have you tried the lobby?
Yes.
But yeah, he wrote those movies. He wrote all three, actually, the Blade movies. He also wrote Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Well, he did the story, but not the screenplay for The Dark Knight. You know, he's also credited for stuff like The Crow City of Angels, the Demonic Toys series from Full Moon Video, Ghost Rider 2, which I like Ghost Rider 2, but I'm not going to say that's a perfect movie.
No, it's not.
But he's one of those guys that sometimes he writes a good movie and sometimes he doesn't. And in my opinion, this was a big bust for me. I think this movie's terribly written. I think it's weird. They put an emphasis on the story, but not on story development. If that makes any sense, because they do focus a lot in very creative ways on his background, his childhood. You know, they have that scene where he has a freak out in his classroom as a kid. They do the bus scene, obviously. They have the scene where, obviously Paul Kent is killed, but that was more of an issue than anything else. But there are some scenes that you can actually see where it seems like they've almost got it in a way. And then after that, it's just kind of there's a lot of speechifying, basically. It's a lot of exposition dialogue.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a problem with a lot of Nolan movies. I got a feeling Nolan had a lot to say in the development of this script.
Defo, it's one of those things where you look at it and think, okay, he's probably had a lot to do with it. He's probably, even not with the dialogue, it could have had it done with the characterization, the way that the characters were laid out.
Well, the big problem is that a lot of the dialogue in here, it doesn't sound like actual dialogue. It sounds like exposition. It sounds like you're not saying this because you're having a conversation. You're saying this because we need to know.
Yeah, you're explaining yourself when it should be your actions and the way that you act and portray the character should be explaining it yourselves. We're the ones who should be asking the questions. Instead, you're asking those questions and you're answering them.
Yeah, and I'm going to go into one of the problems that I had when I talked about them Batmaning Superman. And this really is just a big issue overall with the tone of Man of Steel that I didn't like, is that they had to make Clark Kent conflicted. There was that scene where his dad is questioning whether or not saving those people were right, and they had to kill off Pa Kent to give him a tragedy to focus on in his life, and that's not Superman. Superman, the whole purpose of Superman is he's a hero because he wants to be a hero.
Yeah.
Not because he has a loss in his life that he needs to avenge. Not because, he's not conflicted as to whether or not to use his powers. He does it because it's the right thing to do regardless. Those are the attributes that make up Superman. That's why I say they Batmaned him. They had to make him conflicted. They had to make him brooding. They had to make him question his heroism. No, Superman doesn't question his heroism. He knows what's right and what's wrong. That's why people look up to him.
Yeah.
That no matter what, he will always do the right thing.
It's like if you watch the movie Justice League Babel, right? The Tower of Babel. There's Batman and there's Superman, and when Batman does something shady, Superman would look at him and went, "Why did you do it?" And then Batman's like, "Well, I did it because I had a backup plan for everybody in the league." And he says, "Well, you had a backup plan for everybody in the league, but yourself." And then Batman just looked at him and said, "Well, you're my backup plan." Because he knew that Superman would, if Batman ever went rogue, Superman would have basically destroyed him.
Yeah.
And he knew that Clark would make the perfect choices in order to do things. And with Clark, it was always about choice. He was given the right upbringing and the moral standing to make certain choices. Whereas Bruce, his life is mirrored by tragedy, so everything he does is to stop that tragedy from happening again. I remember when they said Again, Injustice is another primary example of this. The Joker gets Superman and kills Lois Lane. Superman goes ape shit and kills the Joker, right?
Yeah.
And Bruce always like, I would never. Yeah, they always ask him why don't you kill any of the villains that like the Joker or anything like that? And Bruce was like, I don't want to go to his level. I don't want to be that guy because that's a road. If you cross it, you're never going to come back from. And Superman is killing everybody in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it. We talked about it briefly, but the levels of destruction in this movie. I mean, it's one of those things to where, and I'm going to quote one of the Cinema Snob reviews when they reviewed Man of Steel. I've seen Batman 1,000 times. There's that scene where Zod throws Superman into one of the buildings, and the building's about to fall. Okay, this is Superman. He's going to weld the beams together or hold up the building enough for people to get out of the building so that they can go to safety.
Yeah.
Nope, not in this movie. He's just like, oh, well, building's falling. Ah, screw you guys. I got to go fight this guy.
Yeah, that's literally what it is. He just lets people die, and you're sitting there thinking, really?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that, okay, the World Machine that was making all this stuff happen, fine. People that died with that, I can kind of go because, he was trying to stop the machine itself. Fine. But during the battle, there's so much collateral damage when him and Zod are just throwing each other into buildings. It's just ridiculous. Like, the real Superman would have taken this to, like, an empty field.
Yeah,
he would have basically flown out of town.
Destruction, and he would have legged it.
Yeah, he would have led Zod somewhere else to where it would have kept the people safe.
Yeah.
That's what Superman would do. He wouldn't just do that he wouldn't just, go around throwing himself into buildings. He's smarter than that. And that also goes to the whole thing of, the way the fight was choreographed. It was just them throwing each other around. Superman is smarter than that. He knows how to fight. I think he has like a martial arts skill that he learned that's like a Kryptonian martial arts ability. So he knows how to fight smartly. But man, this was just two giants just throwing each other around.
It was literally fuck everybody else. They're just going to go and kill each other.
Yeah.
And then it makes the scene that came after it pointless.
You know what? I'm going to say this. As bad as the setup for that scene was, I get what they were trying to do with killing Zod. I really do. And I'm quoting Doug Walker on this one and Angry Joe from their review.
Yeah.
They wanted to set up a choice in the matter, that Superman is choosing humans over his own people by killing Zod, the last Kryptonian, and basically saying, I'm the savior of the human race. I'm going to choose them over you. And, basically there was supposed to be more to it. The problem is that the Superman character was so poorly written and was given very little character development as Superman. I didn't care. And I think that's why a lot of people were turned off by him killing Zod, because they didn't give enough context as to why he was killing him.
Well, you've killed all these buildings have dropped down. People have died, right? Then you've got this small family right in front of him, and Zod looking to kill them. Otherwise, he's got to do something. One, it shouldn't be possible because they both have the same level of superpowers. Zod shouldn't be able to die that quickly.
Yeah.
Right, and this is me talking as a comic fan here, folks. And two, he basically snaps the guy's neck and then screams. Right, so it's like, oh, I'm tormented. Right, that's the other one that I find extremely just weird. And then you got the third one where he's literally saving the lives of people. He barely knows where he's let everybody else die.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
It would be something if it was like Lois Lane. Like, let's say, okay, Lois, was in the building there, and then a piece of rubble falls on her leg, and she can't move, and Zod is slowly about to, fry her brains out with the laser. That I can understand. In fact, that would have been a lot more poignant than just having some random family. I think, it becomes ridiculous at that point. If it was somebody that had an actual connection with Superman, I think that would have probably, people wouldn't have bickered about it as much. Like I said, I do understand what they were trying to get at, but the build-up to it was so flimsy that I think it just went over people's heads.
Yeah, it's because they were trying to put too much into this movie. They were trying to give that Nolan-esque story, but then they tried to give that Zack Snyder sort of, urgency and huge depth to the action sequences. And then they kind of rushed that as well, and it got to the point where at the end he makes this choice, and it's not a choice that anybody really cared about. It's like, you're just an asshole. And then he's looking there going with the military, like going, I'm here to save the world. No, you're not. You're a fucking... If I was the military after seeing all that shit happen, I would look at ways to kill him.
Well, that's kind of what they do at the end, technically, when they have the drones flying after him, which I did kind of snicker at when he brought down the military drones. Like, that's a $50 million drone you just destroyed. Well, it was. I kind of snickered a little bit, but that's another big issue that I have with the movie, is that for all the good that they do in terms of the backstory with the Clark Kent character, they do nothing with the Superman character. As soon as he dons that suit, there's no character development anymore. Not one. And you can't tell me that there is.
No, there isn't.
Yeah, he is.
I don't know. I didn't know who Superman was in that movie. I knew who Clark Kent was. There was enough build to understand who Clark Kent was, but there was no build to understand who Superman was. You couldn't identify the two.
Yeah.
There was more development of the character in Smallville than there was in that movie.
Yeah, and it's not like you can make the separation between, let's say, Bruce Wayne and Batman. Those two are two very different characters, and they've hammered that out over the years. Superman and Clark Kent are one and the same, and you got to flesh both of them out. And like I said, I think they did some admirable work with fleshing out Clark Kent's character with a lot of that backstory. I think they like I said, they humanized him in the wrong fashion, in my opinion, but they humanized him. Superman, on the other hand, as soon as he dons that suit, there's nothing. There's a couple scenes between him and Lois Lane, but that's just, it's standard two-dimensional lovey-dovey stuff, which I'll take or leave, honestly. Like I said, they did a better job with characterizing Superman in the Reeves Superman than they did in this one, and even in the Brandon Routh Superman, they did more to humanize that character than they did here, and that's why I kind of like the Superman Returns more than I do Man of Steel.
Well, in a sense, as I said, I could see what they were trying to do, but it just didn't work. It didn't work. They didn't have any understanding of the character itself. They tried to give him this edge, and it just made him out to be a fucking idiot. And they gave him that whole thing of, I'm here to save you, you need to trust me. Why would I trust you? You destroyed nearly the entire planet. Why would we trust you?
Yeah. I mean, that honestly, I kind of hope they go into that angle in the second movie. I think that would go more towards characterizing Superman if they go that route, to where he's seen as a villain, kind of the same way how Batman was seen as a villain in the in the Dark Knight Rises, in a way. I'd love to see them do that for Superman, because I think that's where it's justified.
Yeah, they need to basically. That's why I was looking at that as well in terms of setup, because I did a review of this movie for Movie File. For those of you who watch my Movie File series from season 1,
check out Michael Burhan on YouTube, and check out his YouTube channel. You can plug it at the end, but definitely check that out when you get the chance, folks.
Yeah, it's the series is actually gaining steam for the first season at the moment. But the Superman Man of Steel, I did a review on it, and I talked a lot about how the way they set this movie up, it would be so good that Batman came in and he was like mistrusting. So like Wayne Enterprises were helping rebuild Metropolis, and say like they're still wary about this alien thing that's going around everywhere. You could have an incident happen and Superman turns up and Batman kind of tests his mettle in a sense, and then it could lead to like Lex Luthor pulling the strings behind the scenes and getting to the point where he's causing conflict between Batman and Superman. He's making Bruce Wayne not trust this guy, and then they come into conflict. They have their thing going on, and then that will lead on to them fighting a bigger evil. They figure out that Lex is up to no good, and they go after him and stuff, and learn to work together. And that's the thing they need to do. But the way that they've set up the new movie now with all these characters, it seems that they're probably not going to go that route.
Yeah, like I said, like you said before, it's just going to be a cluster. It's just
Yeah.
it's going to be a mess, and like it doesn't need to be, because like I said, you can go in and give Superman more character development in the sequel, and I think you could probably redeem this movie. I mean, if that's your case, if that's the thing where they were just like, all right, the first movie's going to help introduce Superman, and then the second movie's going to flesh him out leading into Justice League, I'm totally cool with that. But it seems like the Batman Superman movie is going to be an overall lead up to Justice League, which I think is a bad decision. It's not going to give them enough time. You know, unless they're going to do like Batman versus Superman Part 1 and Part 2, where they're just going to keep doing parts of it until it leads up to it, which is stupid. I don't know what you do. But I will say though, there are some bright spots to Man of Steel. As much as I thought Michael Shannon did great as General Zod. He camped it up. I mean, I can't say whether or not it was a good acting performance, but it was really terrible. Entertaining.
It was entertaining, but in a bad way, because he kept yelling, and he had this quietness about him at certain point. It's like he couldn't do anything to stand out apart from yell. He was sitting there going, "We must stop him," and doing those weird little voice. And I just stood there, looked at him, and what are you doing? Why are you acting? It's like his mouth. He was trying. Do you know, like you have in those movies where the geek guy meets like this gorgeous girl, and he always talks like this. You know, every time he sees her. That's what Zod was doing. He's like, he was shouting his lines throughout the entire movie, and I was sitting there thinking about it, going, okay, either you really need to take a shit, someone's kicked you in the nads, or you really keep undressing Superman.
His performance is somewhere between Armand DeSantis' performance in Judge Dredd as Judge Rico and Bruce Payne's performance in Highlander Endgame. It's just... Does somebody have a problem with Highlander Endgame?
No, not that. I mean, Judge Dredd.
I love him for that movie. I really do. He's one of the best parts of that movie, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, it's not a great performance, but it's so over the top and entertaining. Oh, Jeremy Irons in Dungeons and Dragons. That's where Michael Shannon fits in. More closer to that. Just that over the top, just scenery chewing. And when you've got such a milquetoast main character like Henry Cavill, it's a guy like Michael Shannon is necessary. You need a guy that can carry the movie, because clearly the main character can't.
But as I said, he didn't carry the movie. I think the one person who did carry the movie was Russell Crowe.
Oh, yeah. You're not going to get any argument for there. Russell Crowe, they gave a lot of backstory to him in that first scene.
Yes,
and
they did.
It was actually really nice.
And they had that sort of like dinosaur type Krypton, you know, and they really fleshed out Jor-El, which was something they didn't have to do. They could have freaking killed him off very easily. But they gave him a lot more story. He had a lot more character development. You could see the relationship between him and Zod, where Zod was like, you know, join me, they're just a bunch of fools. And he basically said to him, no, I'm not. You know, this isn't the way to go. This is you militarizing everything and trying to take the planet isn't the way to go. We need to figure out a way to save the planet. And he comes to blows with Zod, and Zod basically kills him in front of his wife. It's good to watch. In terms of the way that they've done it, they've laid out the characters, and it brought a lot more substance to Clark's character.
Yeah.
To see him return as like the sort of computer image in the database and stuff, I thought was really good as well.
He was basically like a training hub. Like I remember when the Nostalgia Critic parodied him, he would have like little floating bubbles that say like, you know, press X to open the door, watch out for enemies. That was actually one of the few Nostalgia Critic jokes that I actually laughed at.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you sit there and look at it, and he could be an instruction manual. You are quite right. He could basically, the best example of it would be my Wii U. You know, you play a Mario game, and most Nintendo games now are pretty layered to kids. And if you find something hard, it will give you all these little instructions on how to do it, or it will give you an easy way out. And it kind of did that with that movie as well. He gave Amy Adams as Lois Lane an instruction on how to basically outdo the attackers and stuff like that. And it worked. And you know what? He stood out, and his character seemed more of the main character than Clark Kent Superman did, which didn't think it. In terms of Russell Crowe, it's probably one of the best performances he's done. And I'm counting Les Mis in that with him and his, I'm just going to bellow. But, you know, the way he portrayed that and had his characterization done of that character, it worked well. And a lot of people were screaming for a Jor-El spin-off. I wouldn't have an issue with it, but in a sense, that's the wrong he kind of upstaged Cavill's character.
Yeah.
But I don't think he meant to. You know, it was more the writer liking him and like, oh, let's add another little part for you. I'll tell you what, I know you're dead, but let's put you in here.
It's like it's like the Loki thing, where people want to see a Loki spin-off from Thor. You know, it's a situation where the side character ended up upstaging the main actor. And, you know, in terms of Henry Cavill, I haven't seen him in anything else. The only other movie I think I've seen him in is that 300 clone, Immortals, which I hated. I hated that movie.
And there was another one he was doing as well, where he did a movie with Bruce Willis. I think it's on the bargain bin somewhere now. He's got a gun in his hand in the poster.
I think I've seen that, but I can't really think off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's one of those forgettable kind of things.
Henry Cavill to me seems like on the same level as like a Sam Worthington. He's basically just there to be Beefcake.
Yeah.
You know, he's got muscles, he's got the slick back hair like Superman, but he brought nothing to that character. No personality, no nothing. Like I said, that's why I like Brandon Routh. You know, people blame Routh for kind of trying to mimic Christopher Reeve's character. He was basically trying to be the Reeve Superman. At least he brought something to there. You know, it was an impersonation, but it was something. Cavill was
but that's what he was told to do, and this is what people don't understand sometimes. If a director tells you to do something, you're going to do it. It's not like, I think, it's not an indie production like what we do. We kind of, the way that I kind of do things when I direct someone or I write something is I leave things open-ended for the characters to find them themselves and find their own identities. With stuff like this, they will tell you this is what you've got to do. There's no A or B to it. You know, it's you do what I say. And that's, in that sense, that's what Ralph did. He was told to be Christopher Reeves. To look
he did
at
good. I liked it. Like I said, in the case of Cavill, though, he was given nothing in terms of the script. So yeah, maybe you could say that he just had nothing to work with. But even then, he brought more than nothing there. He was basically just there to wear a suit. Yeah,
it's like be Moody Batman, and that's what he was. He was Moody Batman.
Honestly, if you look at the first part of the second act, he's pretty much Wolverine. You know, he's on the boat and he's got the beard. It's like, oh, he's somebody told him, all right, be Hugh Jackman, just don't swear.
Yeah, and it's one of those things with him. I know he's a capable actor. If you've seen him in the Tudors, he is a capable actor. But he's not given that opportunity to be a capable actor. And I believe at the end when we saw Clark Kent, we saw a bit more of what he could do. You know, it added an extra layer, but it was only a minuscule, you know. It's like getting that nice cream cake, that chocolate cream cake that you want to eat, and then just taking a small chunk before that cake gets taken away. You know, you want to get your money's worth on it.
Well, folks, I just realized it's been a while since we've thrown out the call numbers. 213-943-3434. We're continuing our talk with Man of Steel. We've got about 15 minutes left in the main show. I don't know if we're going to go into overtime. My buddy Burhan, he's got some sleep he's got to do because he's got plans. So we might just cut it off early. Well, not early, but just give us a call before the 9:55 mark if you want to call in. Once again, 312-943-3434 is the number to call. This is the Untitled Movie Show, Episode 2, Man of Steel Talk on Blog Talk Radio on the Retro Unlimited Network. Let's talk about something that I didn't realize until it was pointed out to everybody whose reviews I've seen, the massive amounts of product placement.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize this until I saw it again. Well, until I saw clips of it again. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's Michael Bay levels of product placement. You know, every scene is framed so that it's right where the logo is, whether it's the Sears logo during that battle in Smallville, the U-Haul truck being thrown at Superman, the IHOP, the gas station, the brand of camera that Lois Lane was using, the phone that Zod was sending messages to. I mean, it was just ridiculous how much product placement is in here, and just blatant.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you sit there and think to yourself, okay, I know you needed to fund this movie, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's almost like going back to Highlander Endgame. Have you ever seen Highlander Endgame?
Yes, I have, and I enjoyed it for the most of it.
All right, did you see it in theaters, or did you see the DVD release? The video release?
I saw the DVD release. I actually bought it. I actually sourced it from overseas because it wasn't released here at the time, so I got it from America. And this is at the time where you could actually, purchase it from states without getting penalized.
Okay, at the time, I think at the time of the DVD release, they cut this out for I don't know if it was because of people argued against it or because their deal brokered, but Highlander Endgame had a sponsorship deal with JVC. And in the theatrical release, if you remember the scene where Duncan MacLeod kills Connor, right? And he has that big triumphant quickening?
Yes.
If you look in the background on the DVD release, you'll notice there's this big gray splotched billboard in the background, but it looks off. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look flat. It doesn't look like a flat splotch of gray. That's actually because in the DVD release they censored it out. In the theatrical cut, there's this massive JVC billboard in the background of Duncan's quickening scene. It's just big as day, JVC, and it really takes away from what is supposed to be a very triumphant scene. Duncan kills Connor MacLeod, and he gets his powers, to be able to stop Bruce Payne's character. But all you see is this massive billboard, this massive red billboard for JVC Electronics, and they got rid of it in the DVD cut. But that's one of the more egregious examples of product placement that I could think of in
yeah, it's one of those that takes away from a moment. Because, like Stanislavski states that in any, film or TV or theatre that you do, you have a moment. And these moments are what, bring the film together. And that moment was supposed to be the moment where the torch was passed, in a sense. And also that it was a loss of a friend. But instead what they did was, you know what? Let's have a big JVC billboard and just shit on that.
Yeah.
Because your eyes kind of drift from that moment over to the JVC thing, and it just loses the moment of the film altogether.
I mean, look, I don't mind product placement if it's subtle, but it was not subtle in Man of Steel. I mean, it was just blatant and in your face. And honestly, it does not make me want to use U-Haul or Nokia or Nikon or Budweiser, or I might still go to IHOP just because I like their pancakes. But that's not because of Man of Steel.
No,
because I like
look,
IHOP.
Superman destroying everything doesn't make me want to have a pancake.
Yeah.
Superman destroying everything makes me afraid for my life. It's just like this dude is killing everyone. That doesn't want to go to IHOP.
And to be honest, does Superman really need product placement? He's already got his face and name plastered on every single piece of merchandise you can think of. The guy's pretty set in terms of product placement. I don't think you really need to broker deal. You don't really need to cheapen a fight sequence by isolating the camera so that it focuses not on the actress, but on the Sears logo behind her. There's that famous shot of where I think it zooms in on the female Kryptonian's face as he's beating up Superman, and just big as day right behind her is just Sears. Yeah,
it takes away the movie itself, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. In terms of the product placement, I like those types of product placements when they're subtle.
Yeah.
You're having a duologue with someone, there's a Pepsi machine next to you while you're having the duologue. Not when you're destroying everything. People don't really want to see the shit that you're getting into.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. Going back to Armageddon that we talked about, there's a scene where they're in the the main, not the pilots on the rock, but everybody else in the control room, they're focusing on this big countdown clock to when the asteroid hits over the breakaway line, that line that they have to hit where it has to break apart or else it's going to crash into the Earth.
Yeah.
The way they frame the shot, though, it's not blatant and in your face, but you can see the logo of the clockmaker, the specific clock they use. It's like a standard, hands clock. And
Yeah.
Michael Bay in the commentary for it said they actually got a big sponsorship deal from the company that makes that clock because they showed their company logo in the scene. But with the way it's framed, you don't notice that it's in there. It's just it happens to have the name of the brand on it, but it's not like they're focusing on that brand itself. They're focusing on the bigger picture. That's how you do it right. And to think Michael Bay, got it. We're going to Michael Bay for good product placement. That's sad.
Yeah, because it is kind of sad because when it comes to movies now, they're trying to find other ways to fund these things, and product placement is becoming more prominent.
Yeah.
So they have to, because they keep doing these things, they keep making these moves and making these things apparent in movies. It gets to the point now where they're taking away from the movies themselves, and the bad product placement is exactly what happened in Man of Steel.
Yeah. I mean, going back to Michael Bay, talking about bad product placement, go watch Transformers 2 and just see how the awful product placement. I mean, it's blatant just the way they suck off, Mountain Dew and General Motors and all this other stuff. I mean, Bay even broke the cardinal sin of promoting his own movies in his movie when he has when they focus on Shia LaBeouf's character in one of his scenes in his room, he has posters for like Bad Boys 2 and a bunch of other ones, and it's like, Bay, that's rule number one. You don't promote yourself in your own movie.
I think he did it because he was just like, haha, look, I'm Michael Bay.
Yeah, that would basically, that'd be like you doing a movie file and having this job for hire poster in the background, and blatant. Like, it's like...
I need to take a list of hire poster down then.
Just get it in the background, big as day.
Yeah, it's just like, I'll just have like Mikey make an appearance on movie file, promoting it. He'll have like banners and everything and a stun gun. But yeah, no, I agree with you. When it comes to stuff like this, you've got to really make sure that if you do it right. If you don't, or just don't do it at all, because it takes away from what makes the movie special. And in a sense, there's a load of cardinal sins when it comes to this movie. One thing I do want to talk about, what about Amy Adams?
She was wasted, and I was actually going to talk about that. It seemed like they started to give her a personality before she actually meets up with the Superman character when she's talking to Christopher Maloney on the outpost, and she's kind of being snarky and whatnot. You kind of get the sense like, all right, they're going to give her backstory. She's not going to be just the damsel in distress. She's not going to be there just to kind of be something for the story to latch onto. But no, once Superman dons the cape, she falls right into the damsel in distress.
Yeah.
She loses those balls that it seemed like she was going to be a very strong female presence, and no, not anymore. She just was there.
And by the way, ladies and gents, if you haven't read the comic books, Lois Lane is a very strong female presence, to the point where they're giving her own comic.
Yeah, I mean, go back and watch Margot Kidder's performance in the first Superman movie. It's a very ballsy character. She can stand up for herself. I mean, there's that scene where she basically beats up a robber while Clark is just in the background going, you better do what he says, Lois.
Yeah, and it shows exactly the type of person Lois is. In the Smallville, hitting back to that, she's a very ballsy character. She never once in Smallville goes, oh, Clark, save me, blah, blah, blah. No, she'll kick someone's ass.
Yeah. There's that really goofy scene where she kisses Superman, and she's like, they always say it's downhill from the first kiss, and then he goes, I think they just say that about Earth guys, or something like that. Some really awful, cheesy love line. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, it doesn't work, and I think it makes her look like a really terrible actress in this. But in a sense, I think she suffers from Ryan Reynolds syndrome. She's just a part of a very badly written movie.
Yeah, and that's kind of unfortunate that they spun off Man of Steel this way because, like I said, it's easier to spin Batman into the much lighter movies than it is otherwise. And when you look at the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern and Brandon Routh's Superman, I can imagine those two movies being in the same universe more so than I can those two movies being in the Nolanverse.
Yeah.
Like, I could have seen Ryan Reynolds and Brandon Routh teaming up and maybe bringing in Ben Affleck's Batman into it. But now with the recent Man of Steel 2, obviously Batman vs. Superman, and now the news that Justice League might be congruent with that, I worry how we're going to see the upcoming DC universe. I don't think it's going to be a very pretty-looking universe. And if it's written the way it is right now, with all this faux conflict and the empty characters, and I don't think it bodes well. And, you know, it's unfortunate because if you've seen a lot of the stuff, it seems like DC and Warner Brothers do good with their animated stuff and their TV stuff way more than they do their movie stuff, and I don't understand why. I don't understand what the correlation is.
The thing is, this is what I was actually saying. I felt that if they actually merged the two universes for, like, one movie, like, say that they had the Batman-Superman thing going on, and then for the Justice League movie, you introduce the TV characters into the Justice League movie and make them canon, it would have made things a lot more simpler. They're overreaching so much, and you can tell by the Superman movie how much they're overreaching. They're just like, okay, we're going to make Superman a badass, and let's see all these other comic book badasses that we can go, oh, Wolverine's a badass, we'll do him. Oh, like, Batman's a badass, we'll do him.
Back to what I said, they kind of Batman Superman. They made him a conflicted, not a vigilante, but a conflicted superhero. And that was never the point of Superman.
No.
I'm gonna end. We're gonna start wrapping things up, but I want to end with a great phrase, a great dialogue that I heard a couple years ago. I'm a big fan of this online series called Marvel vs. DC. It started off as a bunch of parody videos of the Mac and PC guys, but it was Spider-Man representing Marvel and Superman representing DC, and they would go back and forth. The guy that did that, he used like stop motion action figures. He did his own series, basically focusing on the Marvel and DC universes kind of colliding with each other. Check it out. It's called It's Just Some Random Guy, if you look him up on YouTube. And he did a storyline where I forget what the storyline is, but I think it's Lex Luthor and the Joker figure out a way to trick all these superheroes into believing that they're hardcore vigilantes, so they're anti-heroes, but it doesn't work on Superman. And there's a great dialogue that Lex Luthor and Superman have where they're like, you know, this is why your movie Superman Returns failed, is because people can't relate to a superhero like you because you're not conflicted. You know, you are the man that they feel like you're the man that people should strive to be. You know, people should be as good as you. But people nowadays don't want to be that. They want to relate to characters. You know, they want to have characters that are conflicted, that they don't have to try hard to be like, that they're just on the level as they are.
Yeah, but I couldn't relate to Man of Steel. I couldn't relate to it whatsoever. I could relate to the more moral Superman. He's actually, his values are kind of what makes me the person that I am today.
Yeah. And I think the great line that he ends it with is, people nowadays don't want to strive to be you. People don't want to look up to you anymore. Darn it, she ruined my setup. Okay.
Yeah, people don't want to look up to you.
People don't want to look up to you anymore, Superman, because they'd rather not strain their necks. And I think that was a very smart way to say that, because it's true. You look at how many people like the new Man of Steel, it really does show that, you know, we do live in an era nowadays where people don't want the superhero, the morally justified superheroes. They want guys who are these, you know, conflicted vigilantes, and that's fine, but it doesn't work for Superman.
No, it doesn't, because Superman is a very different animal in comparison. Someone like, say, Spider-Man, for instance, they span him off into a new series called Superior Spider-Man, and what if he basically all the morals and values that Peter Parker had were gone? And they replaced him with, people like to call him Spider-Rock. Yeah. And Spider-Rock has made loads of he's done well in himself, but he's always gone back to doing things his way, which is by being this demented fucking freak that he is. He's antisocial. He thinks he's better than everyone else. He has a huge lack of understanding when it comes to things. and just doesn't give a shit. You know, if you're wrong, if he's wrong, he's still right. If you're wrong, then you're wrong. You know, and it will get to the point where he can even cost someone their life, but still try and talk his way out of it because he's like, well, it has to happen. Like I remember there was this villain who was morally corrupt. He couldn't feel, and the dude basically killed Dr. Kafka, and he went around killing people randomly and stuff, and Spider-Man was there to stop him. And the guy was like, Spider-Man, man, I don't know what he did to him. He did something, he was like beating the crap out of him. And then the guy could feel. And he's like, I can feel again. I can feel again. Spider-Man, you know, I'm fine. And he went, well, you can't survive. You've got to pay for what you've done. And he shot him. And I was just sitting there with my fucking jaw on the floor. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, what the fuck? Thing is, that's not Peter Parker. That's Doc Ock betraying Peter Parker. That's a wolf in sheep's clothing. With this, with Man of Steel, that's supposed to be Clark Kent and Superman. We can't make that same argument.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's one of the reasons why I was really turned off by this Superman. Yeah. And I don't see much hope if Nolan's going to keep his finger on the pulse of the DC universe. I think we're just going to get worse and worse. But at least Warner Brothers is making money. That makes that, you know, that's something.
Well, I will say this, and I will put this as a word of warning, because I recently pitched for the Green Lantern franchise, and I had this whole 3-point plan on how I was going to do it. It got to the point where I was going to send them a scriptment, which was like a treatment/script rolled into one. It's literally how originally when the Spider-Man franchise was being built up as a movie, one of the directors did a huge scriptment for that, and I had a huge scriptment about basically killing off Hal Jordan and then redeeming him, have him turn to a villain, killing him, have him turn to a villain, redeeming him by doing something noble and then killing him, right, to write him out. And it was to give Ryan Reynolds his swan song. It was giving the character layers and portraying Jordan the way he was supposed to, as a human being, as someone who's flawed. And you know, everything was going smoothly, and then I didn't know until the articles online, the papers got wind of it, was that they gave the franchise over to David S. Goyer, who's now writing a new Green Lantern. Apparently, it's going to be one of the DC movies that will turn into miniseries on certain cable networks to combat Marvel's Netflix thing they've got going on. So, yeah, it's kind of bummed out about that, but that shows that the way Warner Brothers don't really give a shit. They'll just do whatever they can to one-up Marvel at the moment, and I think that's the worst thing that you can do. You shouldn't be one-upping your competition. You should be portraying something different to them.
I completely agree, and I do think they are chasing Marvel's coattails, and I think with Disney being a part of that now in the Phase 2 process, they're really going to be chasing even harder now, because Disney, if nothing else, knows how to market a good product, and I think they're smart enough to know not to mess with what Marvel's been doing right now. Whereas Warner Brothers, they seem to have so much creative control in their DC universe that I think it's going to end up swallowing them.
Yeah, they've recently moved DC's offices, haven't they, to actually so they can be closer to Warner.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, DC is just basically an aggregate for movie licenses for Warner Brothers. They're basically there to just come up with ideas for them to market, and that's really a disservice to DC, who has some great people behind them.
Yeah, and it's a shame because they do some amazing shows, and they've, you know, with Arrow, with the new Flash series coming out, they've done some amazing things, and I really hope that they can actually pull this off, because I want to see more Superman and Batman. I don't want to see Ben Affleck be blamed for a bad movie, and I know that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ben Affleck's really talented, and it's unfortunate. I hope that this doesn't end up hurting him in the long run. But I just want to give you a heads up. We did kind of fall into the archive show. I was trying to hit that 9:55 mark so that we didn't, we could at least end it to the point to where we can go, okay, guys, we're going to continue on from here, but we're going into the archive, but we didn't get a chance to. But we are into the archive stuff, and as I said before, my good buddy Burhan has to head to sleep early, so we're going to wrap things up. We didn't like Man of Steel, either one of us. There's some hope that Batman vs. Superman could redeem it, but with the cluster that they're doing with all these extra characters, I highly doubt it. And like I said before, I think Warner Brothers is just chasing DC's coattails, and they're just going to keep chasing them.
I will point this out. As a standalone movie, it was okay. And I've said this in my movie file series. As a Superman movie, it was bad. And as I said, there's a few things you don't mess with Superman's character. Core values, right? Everything, for some reason, everything has to have an edge now. It's like attitude. It's like we're living back in the 90s again. Everything has to have tude. It
goes back to a relatable character versus a character to strive towards. And people don't want characters that they can strive towards. They can't relate to them. They don't want to see a character that is just a good person because he's a good person. They got to have. There's got to be more to it, or else people will just fall out of it, which I think is ridiculous and I think is nonsense.
Yeah, I agree. And giving him like two doesn't really work because Superman's not like that. I don't mind the action sequences, but they have to be justified, and they have to justify every death now that happened in Metropolis is on his head.
And I hope they play up on that in the sequel. They won't.
Yeah.
I hope they will, but I doubt they will. So.
And that's supposed to be the problem as well. Superman's supposed to be Teflon, in a sense, because there's no way to corrupt Superman. He's uncorruptible.
Well, it was. I hate to mention this, but it was because of his strict morals that made him kind of the bad guy in the Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller one, where he was so glued to his morals that he was clouded by almost being too moral. He didn't get the job done because he was following the rules too much, which you could have gone down that route, but you've established that the character doesn't care.
Yeah.
And because of that, I don't care if Batman has to beat him up to get the job done. He kind of is deserving of it. Like they said in the fake trailers video, I'm kind of rooting for Batman to beat up Superman. And I don't like Batman. I have my problems with Batman.
I like Batman. I think Batman's awesome. But yeah, he is a flawed character though. But that's what Batman's always been built as. He's a tactician. He's the guy who doesn't have to be the hero. He's the anti-hero.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. Now in this, if you're making a guy like Superman corruptible, then where's your heroes?
Yeah, there are vigilantes and there are superheroes. Batman's a vigilante. Superman is a superhero. So are the rest of the DC characters, and I don't think Nolan understands that, and I really think it's going to be the downfall of the DC universe. So we're going to wrap things up. Burhan, do you have any plugs you want to make before we head on out?
Yes, I currently have a movie out called The East London Story Slap or Die. You can actually check it out on Daily Motion. It's on their video on demand service. If you want to look at it, I'll be posting the links for that on my website, www.nerdgenius.com, and also on the Facebook page, facebook.com/nerdgenius. I'm trying to find a way so that I can pitch this to other film podcasts and film websites and stuff so that people can get me on and talk about it and even review it. In a sense, it's very cheesy, very 90s, characters were tude, and it was directed in 2007 by a guy called Sukdip Gira. I managed to acquire the rights to it because they weren't really doing anything for it. So as payment, they actually, they kind of Chronicle Riddick me, basically, gave me the rights to the movie that I was in. It's not the best work I've ever done, but it's still part of my collection, and it's one of those where I kind of hold it in the deepest parts of my heart, because I built it. So check that out, guys. Please do. It's coming soon to Amazon for on digital demand as well, and we're going to be releasing a DVD set version of it where you have the bonus features such as the outtakes, the interview sessions, and also 2 cuts of the movie. One, which is the one that's actually out at the moment for rent on video on demand, which is the black and white version, and a color version of the film, which was actually cut frame by frame to its original variation of it. So that's the unrated version. So check that out, guys. This Shot for Hire episode 3 should be debuting this Sunday. It's taking time because there's a lot more that I'm putting into this one. I want it to look so effective to the point where it really allows Miguel's script to stand out, because Miguel actually wrote the script for this one. And I directed it, of course, starred in it, and you have other actors that worked with me on that project as well. I'll give a huge shout out to them when that's out. www.nerdgenius.com, www.retrounlim.com for if you want to check out this show and all the other shows on there. I'm a part of the Retro Unlim network as well for I Got Gameplay every Saturday at 8 p.m. only on the Retro Unlim network of fanboysanonymous.com. So we'll give a shout out to Fanboys Anonymous and Tony Mango. And also one last shout out for Chris Dace. He's doing something awesome at the moment. I've donated $25 to it because I'm broke, so that doesn't help. That's the Dace-tacular Gaming for a Cause. They're gaming for charity, folks. Come on, it's a big thing here, and I am really, really surprised that people are not donating for this. So make sure you donate. They've got tons of prizes, so if you donate, you get a chance to win a prize, put in a raffle for it. And I will be posting a link for this and all the other stuff I talked about on the Retro Unlim network. And also watch out for Movie File Season 2. The first episode actually is going to have Miguel Leon on there as well with me, and we'll be talking Super Mario Brothers.
Man's got a lot on his platter, ladies and gentlemen. He's got a lot to work on. Did you promote this week's episode of I Got Gameplay?
This week's episode, yes, I did. And we're, as I said, it's 8 p.m., and we'll be talking Silent Hill.
I'm looking forward to that one. It's one of my favorite video game franchises, and I definitely want to be a part of that. So look into that. That's Saturday nights at 8. I Got Gameplay with myself and Michael Burhan. Well, Michael Burhan's the host. I'm playing sidekick on that one. Check out. You know what? Let me give a plug to Clint Davis. Clint was here last week. He wasn't here this week. He had plans. But he's got a show.
He was actually waiting for special guests for his show tomorrow to actually ring him and find out what the hell's going on. Otherwise, he would have been here. So he deeply apologizes, guys, but he is listening in.
Yeah, he's got a show tomorrow, I believe, 12 noon is when it's scheduled for, you mentioned to me?
Yes, it's basically the XFI, it's XFI network, part of the Retro Island network. It's a coup that we got these guys on. It's an MMA show. It's really fun. He takes like a list of guests who are fighters who work for the XFI, the Extreme Fighting League, I believe it is, and they work on loads of other like MMA companies as well. So check that out, guys, and make sure that you stay tuned to the Retro Island Network. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we're everywhere. We're on billboards as well. I swear. And make sure that you also check back for more episodes of the Untitled Movie Show. Episode 3 is coming next week. So what have you got planned for us for episode 3, Miguel?
I'm thinking about talking about directors, and it's due to a recent review that I read for a movie that came out. I'm not going to say which one, but I wanted to talk about directors and the transformation between a good director and a bad director. Basically, when good directors go bad is the tagline that I'm thinking for. And make sure to come back here next Thursday, 8 o'clock p.m. What time is it over there on British Standard Time?
It's actually 1 a.m. on British Standard Time. So make sure that you check back for that, guys.
Yeah, 1 a.m. British Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern, here on the Retro Unlim channel on blogtalkradio.com. Thanks for everybody that listened in on the live show. Like I said, our timing was a little off, so I couldn't brace you guys. So if you were a little bit jarred by us ending all of a sudden, check us out on the archive section. You'll get the tail end of our conversation. For all of us here at Retro Unlimited, for Michael Burhan of the Nerd Genius, for myself, I'm Miguel Leon. Take us out, Jay!
celebrity voices are impersonated. No celebrities were harmed in filming of this episode.
Excuse me, sir. The show's over.
Get away, zit face.